Hello everybody, it is January 21st, 2017, and this is log number 2 of the 2017 pepper growing season. I'll touch on a couple of things that talked about last time, maybe a couple of new things, and so yeah, I'm just going to get started. I'm not going to do too much preamble. So, last time I had some Salvador bird's eye peppers, which I put into the paper towel sprouting method. That was on January 12th. And so we're going to have a look to see here how they're doing. Now I've already had a sneak peek, and I can tell you that 100% of my peppers have actually sprouted. So what I'll do is I'll hold that up like so. I'm assuming you can see that. And so, as you can see, 13 out of 13 have sprouted. Some a lot more aggressively than others. And it's definitely, I would say, past time to transplant these. So, I've never done this before, like I'm doing it this time. So it's going to be kind of an ongoing experiment. So you're going to see, what I'll do is I'll do one, and then I'll pause the video and do the rest. And I'll show you what I've got afterward. So I've got here a bunch of those peat pots. I'm sure most of you have probably used these before. I've been soaking these for about 5 minutes or so in about a little warmer than room temperature water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually sort of poke that open a little bit, and then I'm just going to drop a seed, a sprouted seed, into here, and hopefully that goes. I added to 1 gallon of water, I added some of the fertilizer that I use in my aerogarden. So this stuff says for house plants you'd add half a capful per gallon. For starting the aerogarden, the 3-pod model use 4 milliliters per aerogarden, so I'd say that's probably in the gallon range. So I used approximately a little more than half a cap, so I'm going to guess that I'm probably at the 3 or 4 milliliters per gallon range. And just so you know, this has got 4% total nitrogen, 3% phosphate, 6% potash, 1% calcium, 0.5% magnesium, and yeah, that's about it. It says for starting, vegetable growth, flowering, and fruiting, so it's kind of one of those all-purpose dealies. So, I've got the old peat pot, and I'm going to very carefully, with fingers that I've washed off, I'm going to place a seed in there with its leaves pointing upwards, hopefully, and we'll see what happens. So, I guess I'm trying to do this so that you can see it in the video. I don't know if I placed my camera very well. I'm kind of new to this whole video logging thing. So it seems that the roots have just started to adhere to the paper towels. This is why I'm thinking I left it a little too long. Don't want to damage the roots. There we go. And just going to place that in there. Just like so, and I'm going to hope that the plant knows what to do after that. Guess we don't need the seed shell anymore there. Husk. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the leaves poked out there, and we're just going to leave it like that, and hopefully nature takes its path. Okay, so I've done 3 of them, and I believe all 3 I damaged the roots. So for the remaining 10, I'm going to actually cut it out of the paper towel, and that hopefully solves that issue. I figure a little bit of the paper towel probably won't hurt the plant. you can see there, you can see that the root actually came through the paper towel, and it's really well adhered. So I'm going to very carefully cut around that and just leave the paper towel attached to the root. So, I'm going to go in here. Just going to sort of loosen up the top there. I'm going to try to put this in. Maybe I'll take that helmet off too, if it'll come. Nope, it won't come. Leave that for now then. I'm just going to drop that in there, like so. If I can get it to actually go in and face the right direction. Again, nature hopefully will do its thing. So I'm going to do the rest of them like that. So I have gone ahead and carefully cut and tore the paper toweling into pieces, and very carefully jammed those bad boys into the peat pots. I also did the Brazilian starfish that Reservation Fire sent me. There were 6 seeds in the starter paper towel that you can look in my last video. That would be log number 1, I guess. One of them here, you probably can't see in the video, but it looks really good. But if you look super close, there's tiny little dots of mold spores. So I very carefully tore around what I hope was the start of those mold spores, and I've decided that I'm just going to sacrifice this one. This one here didn't sprout at all, but really 5 out of 6 is respectable. I had 13 of the El Salvador bird's eye, and I lost one. I don't know where it went. Now, even being very careful, tearing around the paper and cutting around the roots, I still managed to damage quite a few of them. I still went ahead and planted them. I didn't group them into damaged versus not damaged. I just sort of plunked them in one after another. So I don't expect them all to survive. And really, I didn't expect all 13 to sprout. I was only expecting a handful of the 13 to sprout. So really, we're doing pretty good. And even if, you know, I end up with 1 or 2 of each one, a strong plant, that's plenty. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on, like so. And this is going to go back into my little grow box. Now, you may be wondering about my grow box. It's not really worth mentioning. It's basically just a cardboard box lined with aluminum foil. I've got some pictures of it elsewhere. The temperature inside is about room temperature. I would say probably averages 22 degrees Celsius. It's got lights on all the time. I currently don't have a timer set on it. I will be setting that up soon. And inside these boxes, the temperature probably rises a few more degrees because it's, you know, a little mini greenhouse. So that's all I'm doing so far with these. And again, this is just an experiment. It's not a big deal if these don't go. I have plenty of seeds of all of these. So there's that. I'm going to set that aside. Now these ones, if you also look back at my last video, you'll see that I planted 2 other varieties. Or set them up in the paper towels to sprout. One is Count Dracula, and the other is my personal favorite called Cherry Bomb. I haven't actually opened these up. This is the very first time I've had a peek. So my cherry bombs, looks like I've got 1 sprout. Oh, that's 2. So I got 2 sprouts. I'll hold that up a little closer. 2 sprouts. Looks like 1 bad seed, and then some that haven't sprouted. They may not. This one looks promising. It's got kind of a bit of a greenish hue coming through the wall of the seed. And these ones are the Count Draculas, and none of those have sprouted. One looks like it has mold spores on it. This one here, mold spores. These 2 have not sprouted. They're very small seeds. They look maybe like they were not fully developed. They were sent to me, again, I can't remember who it was that sent them to me. I'm sure if I go through my mail I can find that. Thank you to, hopefully you know who you are. And I apologize for forgetting who's who. I'm not holding my breath that these are going to sprout, but we'll keep them going. And I'm just going to let that one cherry bomb, or red hot cherry pepper as some people call them, I'm just going to let it, see if it'll come a little bigger, and maybe a couple other ones will sprout. Now, I spoke briefly last time about pests, so I'm just going to touch on that a little bit. So here is one of my overwintering cherry bombs. Now, I cut it off here and here. This was planted, I think it was, I don't have it marked anymore, but I'm going to guess sometime around May last year. And then I chopped it way down and brought it inside. And then it was attacked by several different pests. I've kind of lost track of which plants had which. But you can see here there's some dead leaves, there's some damage on some of the leaves, and some of them are pretty gnarly, and actually it looks like, yeah, sure as heck, I've got thrips on that leaf. They're tiny, I don't know if you can see it. It's a tiny little white, it's maybe 1 millimeter long, and it looks almost like a tiny little ant, I guess is the way to put it. So now this plant is one of many that I've sprayed numerous times with insecticidal soap. So this is what I have been using. Now I've discovered, and this plant is evidence of it, that if you mix this up and then leave it in the spray bottle for a month, it starts to take on a whitish color. It goes through a process I believe is called saponification, but I could be wrong with that one. And I believe that it makes the chemical rather harsh. And so some of my plants did really well, came back just fine, and other plants started to look like this. And I don't believe this is all because of the pests. As you can see, it's putting out a pod, and a lot of energy is being put into that pod. And you know what? I figure let it rock, and we'll see what we end up with. If it turns out well, great. I love cherry bomb peppers, and it'll be a nice little snack one day. If it doesn't, well, you know, so be it. It was an overwintered plant. It was just an experiment, and I'm not putting it under a whole lot of lighting. It spends most of its time with a little bit of spillover light from my grow box and from my aerogarden, but that's about all the extra light it gets. Here's another one. This was a Bujalokia that I brought in. I had planted this on June 19th, and it did grow bigger, and then I cut it down because it was a little late in the season. I couldn't get it outside, and then it sort of kind of languished a little bit. Now, some of the leaves are fairly healthy. They're kind of gnarly. The roots on this one are fairly healthy. I don't overwater this one. Some of the ones that I have in the double cup method, I have made the mistake of overwatering. So, word of the wise, you're better off just having a little dribble of water on the bottom of these things. Don't get tempted to, put an inch of water in the bottom because it's just going to cause the roots to suffer. You're going to drown your plant. And I don't know how this is going to do because the leaves are all very small. I haven't been giving it a whole lot of extra light. I'm just seeing if it's going to survive the winter inside, and then I'm going to plop it outside into my little greenhouse. This one also had been attacked by the same pests, but it seems to be doing better. So there's that. Finally, and as far as my overwintering plants is concerned, this is the one that I had pruned in my last video. I've not given it a whole lot of extra light, and I've kept the pot, I've been watering in the bottom, and I just gave it a little sploosh. Let me just demonstrate how much water I've been giving it. About like this much And as a shift worker, it's kind of hard to really tell you what my schedule is when I water. It's kind of random, but I figure as long as it's not getting bone dry, as long as the leaves aren't, you know, getting too curly and dry. There are a few in here that look like there's some remnants of damage from either the old soap or the pests. I don't see any pests on it right now. It seems to be doing okay. So I figure that this might be okay. I'm assuming that at this point, with the thickness of this stalk, that it's got a good healthy root structure. And again, I believe in my last video I said that I thought this might be a Cascabella, but I'm not convinced. I actually believe this might be a Mirasol. We'll find out come spring, I guess. So, I have a little project that I'm working on. This is for my grow box. So, these are not grow lights. These are just LED sunlight type bulbs. They're just temporary. I do have some grow lights on order. They're LEDs. But I figured I wanted to have this thing rock and rolling. Currently, my grow box that I have with the aluminum foil, the whole shebang, has some LEDs. They're 3000K, and they're not ideal. They work okay for sprouting, and my plants seem to do okay up until they're about this size. Once they get to about this size, they start to suffer, and it's hard to describe. They don't really go spindly. They just sort of stay low and bushy, and they never really grow really well. And I'm gonna say it's got to be the light, because everything else I'm doing is pretty much the same as everyone else in the Google Plus community. So this is just a piece of pine with a ripped hunk of 2x4 glued onto the back of it, and you can see here there's a groove that I had done with my table saw, and that goes down the entire length, and I embedded into that some regular house cable, like so. Attach one of those bad boys, and these are just your cheap plastic sockets, and these are your Y splitters. All of these items can be purchased at like your usual box stores, Home Depot and so forth. I don't know exactly what I spent. I'm gonna say these are maybe $2 or $3 a pop. The lights, well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what kind of light you want, so you guys can pick that. The splitters were a couple of bucks. The pine, this was a hunk of scrap that I have. I built furniture on the side, so it's just some leftover pine I had. And this is just a piece of garbage 2x4 that I had that I ripped the end off. I used a little bit of wood glue, and at the very end, I used a piece of, or a little bit of construction adhesive, so that if I yank on the cord, it doesn't pull the cord out of the socket. And of course, I've got, you know, the house cable, probably cost me a few bucks, and the end cost me a few bucks. So all in all, I mean, I'm thinking probably less than 20 bucks for the whole shebang. It's maybe 30 plus the lights. Obviously, the lights are going to be a few bucks depending on what you buy. So we'll see how that works once I've got some time to fix my box. And then also, I guess I should have touched on this earlier. These are the pellets that I've been using. They come like this. Once they've been soaking for 5 minutes or 10 minutes in warm water, they get to be like so. They're made of peat. You can get the ones that are made of coir, which is, or coir, as some folks might say, which is from coconut shells. And so yeah, they work pretty good. In the past, I've had mixed results with these. They tend to stay really quite soggy, even once you take them out of the water and you just sit them on their own. Maybe I'm soaking them too long, I don't know. But they get kind of soggy, and I'm worried that it might be too wet for the roots, especially with peppers. They like to have some dry roots. So I don't know, we'll see how that goes. The other thing that can happen with these is, you know, if you keep them, especially if it's in springtime and there's bright sunlight, and you put them in one of those containers like I have, it can get really hot in here, and in peat pellets, the combined effect is that it cooks your plants. So yeah, don't do that. And I guess what I'll do is quickly grab my phone, which is being my camera, and I'll show you my aerogarden real quick. So here you can see my aerogarden. Hopefully I can get some focus. There we go. In the back, I've got a variety of tomatoes. They're all the ones that came with the aerogarden. This is the 9-cell version. My wife got it for me for Christmas. I believe she spent something like $300 on it. So they aren't cheap. There's some chives in the back. Originally the chives were in the front, and this was in the back, and obviously the parsley was suffering from not getting enough light. So I moved the chives to the back. Now, something I know about chives can grow in like every condition. You can torture chives, so I figure that's fine. In the front here, and here are some standard curly basil, Thai basil. Yeah, this is Genovese basil, and this is Thai basil. So, anybody who's growing basil's, I mean, if you're going to make anything with peppers and tomatoes, you got to have basil. So, one of the things I'd like to point out with basil is once you start getting to this point where, let me see if I can focus here. Nice. Sure. You can see I've topped it inside there and left these two tiny little nodes to sprout. So I just trimmed this morning and it's already rebounding. Basil is notorious for its ability to take a pruning and to expand. So I encourage you to grow basil, and as it grows, once you've got a couple of nodes on here, so you got a node down here and you got a node up here, once you've got that many nodes, start topping it, and the branches will split. It does a really nice job, and you end up with way more basil that way. So there is my lemon. I planted this thing from seed out of a lemon that I bought in the grocery store. So really didn't cost me barely anything. The leaves are gloriously green, and I prune it regularly, so you can see the end is cut off there. So something I've learned about lemons is they like to be pruned. They tend to grow a little bit scraggly, a little bit, without much rhyme or reason. So, yeah, I've never grown a lemon before. I am open to suggestions, advice, recommendations, anything you can give me. For anybody out there who has been growing lemons, or who'd like to grow lemons, they attract spider mites. And it's amazing. I didn't even realize I had spider mites in my house, and they showed up in this thing. It took numerous applications of that insecticidal spray. It always worked every time, but they always came back a week or two later. So, but you'll notice the plant didn't suffer at all. I have no weird leaf curl going on. I've got no other negative effects on my plant. So insecticidal soap works fantastically well on this thing. That's it for, what did I say? January 21st, 2017. That's my log. If anybody has suggestions, ideas, things you'd like me to shoot, more explanation on any of the plants that I have, please give me a comment, give me a suggestion. I'm not going to tell anybody to subscribe to my channel because I don't plan on being a YouTube phenomenon like Hank Star has become. So, yeah, thanks for watching.